Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ensure that all of you are safe, all of you are comfortable during these very unsettling times. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to descend upon us on this blessed day of Friday with His mercy and His forgiveness and His gentleness, His lutf. And it is a special Friday in that it is the last Friday of Sha'ban, and we will soon be upon the month of Ramadan. So we ask also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us in these final days of Sha'ban, these final hours of Sha'ban, and help us arrive safely in the month of Ramadan. So obviously, because this is the last Friday of Sha'ban, I was going to dedicate my remarks to Ramadan. But upon thinking about that the last couple of days, I wanted to approach it a little bit differently. And what I want to say in the beginning is that there's no doubt that Ramadan is the most important time in the Muslim calendar. It is the highlight of our liturgical calendar, except for those that will be performing Hajj, but since that's obviously not going to happen this year, for all of us, this is the time. It is the time of forgiveness. It is the time of mercy. It is the time of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the time in which we commemorate and rededicate ourselves to the Quran. It is the time, of course, of fasting, of night prayers, of taraweeh, of dua, all of these great things. And I remember when I was a kid, and it would be around this time, the khatib would talk about Ramadan and the importance of Ramadan and all of that. But to be honest, maybe privately, not wanting to divulge such feelings publicly, I would feel I don't get it. I mean, I get it rationally, but I don't get it here. How can I make Ramadan wonderful for me? You know, all of these stories, all of these miracles that happened in Ramadan. But for me, I'm not feeling the miracles at the time. I was in school, and I was the only person fasting in my class, in my school, and having to deal with those, day-to-day challenges. So this year, rather than rattle off all of these hadith and all of these verses about the virtue of Ramadan, which are essential. I mean, don't get me wrong, that is why this month is important. I wanted to come at it a little bit differently. And I wanted to offer you a tactic, a tool, a strategy that I have been following for almost a decade now that has really transformed my fasting and my relationship with the month of Ramadan. To the point where I can honestly say, Alhamdulillah, I look forward to Ramadan every year. And not only do I look forward to Ramadan, Alhamdulillah, but I look forward to the gifts that we receive, the spiritual and the creative and the emotional and the psychological gifts that we receive in Ramadan. So I want to share this with you, hope and pass it on. Hopefully it will be something that you will find beneficial as well. It all revolves around what I call keeping a Ramadan journal. And this doesn't need to be anything fancy, nor does it have to cost anything. But simply the idea is to track certain things during the fasting month that will help you articulate for yourself what helps your fasting, what doesn't help your fasting, what augments your fasting, why you're fasting, what you hope to accomplish, etc. So the first thing I like to do is a couple of days before Ramadan, in my Ramadan journal, and I actually have like a little journal, a little book for that, but it could easily be on your phone or anything like that, is I like to write down what are the goals, what do I hope to achieve outside of fasting. Obviously fasting that's why we're doing the month. So I have religious goals. I want to read X number of the Quran, or I want to pray so much, or there's a book, of a Sharia nature that I want to return to, or there's a tafsir I want to look at. So they're like religious goals. And then there are also what I call personal or secular goals, things that I want to get out of it for myself that are personal. It could be about watching what I eat. It could be about certain type of exercise, keeping up with certain patterns. It could be keeping up with certain types of reading or work projects or whatever the case may be. But I like to write them out so I see them in front of me. So I know when the month starts that these are the things that I hope, inshallah, if I can meet these things, it will be a good month. It will be a positive month. Of course, it's a good month because it's the month of fasting. But I mean, I will come out saying it was a great month for me. Now, when you do that, when you goal set, when you write down your goals, and you look at that every day, you start to think about those goals. So you are reminded about why you're doing this, why you wrote them down. So you kind of push yourself forward. The next thing I like to write down are my dua goals. So again, I have two sets of dua goals. I have one set which is otherworldly. You know, I ask for freedom from the hellfire. I ask for tawbah. I ask for maghfirah, for forgiveness. I ask for the health of myself and my family, and that my faith becomes stronger, that my knowledge become greater. So there are things related to the deen, let's say, and then there are personal or secular dua, whatever issues I'm facing in my life at the time. In this case, there will be no doubt that amongst those dua would be the alleviation of this quarantine and the reduction of the suffering due to COVID-19, and by extension, the health of our community and the preservation of our mosque and things like that. But again, I like to write them down, and I like to do 3 to 5 of each. So it's not like I'm writing a letter to Santa Claus and it's just page after page after page, but these are the top issues. So what I do with that is that every day when I break my fast, when I'm having suhoor, when I'm praying my witr prayer, these are the dua that I'm always going to begin with, in addition to anything that I am inspired to say or I'm inspired to mention at that time. So I'm not limited to those dua, but these are the ones that I write. These are the top tier dua. And what I have found by writing them out like that and articulating them for myself, like my goals, throughout the month, I'm always asking myself, why are those issues important to me? And if they're so important to me, why don't I mention them outside of Ramadan? And if they're so important to me, why have I not done anything about them before Ramadan? If reading the Quran is important, if forgiveness is important, tawbah is important, if praying for the community or showing gratitude for the community that we have is important, why don't I mention those things outside of Ramadan? So it has another effect, a secondary effect, where it causes me to articulate for myself why in the first place I have mentioned it and why it's important. And as I've said in the article that I put together recently about the Ramadan journal, oftentimes those questions themselves are the answers to the dua and are the answers to what you've been seeking all along. So having written my goals, having written my specific dua, then I look at Ramadan in thirds, based on the hadith that Ramadan, the first 10 days are days of mercy, the second 10 days are days of forgiveness, and the last 10 days are days of freedom from the hellfire. Now, ironically, this hadith is actually da'if, it's weak, technically, but we use the weak hadith in these type of situations as motivation. And in this particular case, when it comes to goal setting and journaling and mapping out Ramadan, it's of tremendous importance. So for me, it's very easy. In my personality, it's very easy for me to be like, okay, now I'm going to take on all of these new traits, cold turkey. I'm going to stop the bad traits and keep going. And then what ends up happening is maybe a few days later, 10, 15 days later, I burn out. And that happens to a lot of people in Ramadan, is that they burn out towards the end of the month. So I look at the goals as staged in those 10 days. Every 10 days, I'm like, where am I vis-a-vis these goals? Let me add some more in the second set of 10 days. And in the last 10 days, I really let go of all constraints and I really sprint as hard as I can till the end. It's only 10 days. You can sprint for those 10 days so that I arrive at the evening of Eid and I feel fulfilled, alhamdulillah. I feel I've accomplished something. I feel I have increased my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I understand why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called the day of Eid the prize day, Yawmul Ja'iza, because it really is a day to celebrate what you've accomplished. So I look at the 10 days as a way to stage my goals so that I don't get burnout. The other thing I like to document in my Ramadan journal which is also the things that I've just mentioned are maybe pre-Ramadan. Throughout the month, what I like to write down, just very simple notes. I like to make notes about food and about sleep. What foods have helped my fast, what foods harm my fast, and also what type of patterns of sleep have helped my fast or harmed my fast. So now that I have like 10 years of these notes, before Ramadan, I can look at my past journals and I can see, okay, I need to avoid this. This is a constant problem. I end up craving this in the middle of the month, forgetting that I commit, in the beginning of the month to stop it. I usually don't eat or drink this, but it seems to be very helpful, particularly in the month of Ramadan. So I need to make sure I have that in the house, etc. And that really has helped me tremendously. It's helped with things like caffeine withdrawal. It's helped with like headaches. It's helped me really enjoy the feeling of hunger, because there is a joy, like when your stomach growls from the hunger in the middle of the fasting day. I mean, it's a little uncomfortable. Obviously, it's supposed to be, but there is a spiritual joy in feeling that. And when you feel that joy and you can enjoy it, it's hard to describe, but you have altered your relationship with fasting. But if you feel that pain and that hunger, and you're annoyed by it and bothered by it and disturbed by it and can't wait till it goes away and are just looking at the time and waiting for the day to end, you've lost out on something very important. It is a joy truly to feel that you have abstained from that which is permissible. I mean, everything that we abstain from is completely permissible, but when we do that, knowing the reward, knowing that it has been given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that people better than us in the past have done it, it really is a tremendous spiritual awakening of the soul. So to help encourage that, it's important that you remember, when you break your fast, what are you consuming, such that you help yourself the following day. It's very, very easy to crave the wrong things because you're fasting, to consume the wrong things, particularly during the suhoor time, the pre-dawn time, and then sort of ruin your fasting day. And also likewise with sleep, our sleep patterns alters somewhat. I suspect for many people during this time of quarantine, it will alter significantly. And I've noticed, just to give you a small example, I've noticed the importance of just spending maybe 10, 15 minutes in the sunlight every day, as it's easy to avoid going outside when you're fasting. But having that exposure to the sun and that vitamin D is quite essential, for me at least personally, to helping me get through the day. So alhamdulillah, I've gone from struggling sometimes with the fast, as we all do, to not just looking forward to Ramadan, but savoring and enjoying that feeling. And a lot of this I attribute to the journal, in the sense that I'm sort of tracking and marking. In the business world, there's a famous statement that which gets measured gets managed. So if you don't measure these things, if you don't mark these things, what helps, what harms, how you experience your fasting, etc., you're not going to improve on them the following year. And because this is such a huge commitment from us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a whole month, it really behooves us to take it seriously and to think and to track those things that will help, or those things that can harm our fasting. The last thing I like to do with the journal is I like to make some notes. Again, this all can be done on one single sheet of paper. I'm not talking about anything elaborate. I like to make some notes about the Eid. And I really want the Eid to be a day of celebration. And I know this year it's going to be very difficult, that most likely, as it is now, a week before Ramadan, most likely we will not be at the mosque. It's still going to be the day of Eid. And we should celebrate with our families in the most creative of ways. Maybe we can do this on Zoom or on YouTube or some way. It is really incumbent upon us to celebrate that day, to squeeze out of it every ounce of joy and happiness, to celebrate our forgiveness, to celebrate our accomplishments, to celebrate this gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. When you do this process, if you take some of my advice and you can tweak it to, what works for you, one of the things that you will find is you will start to understand why Ramadan is special. So when you start taking your fasting seriously, documenting these things, goals, your dua, particularly the dua, when you focus on like these 3, 4 things, and then throughout the year, when you see how Allah Ta'ala has given you those things and more in a way that you never thought possible, it just increases your faith. It increases your love for Allah Ta'ala. It increases your love for the fasting. It increases your love for, this devotional, practice, your ibadah, etc. And that's the gift that you get. The gift that you get is you see how easy it is and how the distance is from us, not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is why in the verses of the fasting in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah caps that discussion and He says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if my servant asks you of me, I am indeed near. Allah Ta'ala is near. We are the ones that forget that. But through the process of fasting and through the process of all of these extra works, we are awakened to the fact that Allah Ta'ala is near. So when you ask, the power of the dua, the power of the fasting, the power of the Quran, the power of the month of Ramadan, etc. So I hope and I pray, inshallah, that you find some utility in what I'm offering. Lastly, I want to turn to just a couple of community, sort of more community-related issues. Number one, I think at this point in the quarantine, I think it's easy for people to think it's over. The weather is nice. We've been inside for so long. It's sort of like a snowstorm that has ended. And I want to caution people against, breaking these rules. If anything, in our state, in the state of Maryland and the surrounding DMV area, the restrictions have actually increased legally. The directives for face masks, for social distancing, etc. And I want to emphasize the absolute importance of us abiding by all of these things. Now is not the time to give up. The numbers of cases of COVID-19 in the state of Maryland have increased dramatically, as have the deaths. If you look at the Maryland health website, you will see that the curve has increased, is on the increase exponentially. So please do keep in mind these things. Continue the practices that we have started with about a month or so ago. Reach out to community members that might need help or might need assistance, but remember to maintain those protocols. So don't give up. Inshallah, the relief is coming soon. It will come sooner than we think. Inshallah, we pray that Allah Ta'ala alleviates the suffering for the state and for the country, and may we rejoice, inshallah, and celebrate in our mosque once again. Also, there has been a death last night in the community. Brother Sayyid Tufail Ahmed, may Allah have mercy on his soul, passed. Actually, right after this live cast, I will be driving to the cemetery to help the family with the janazah and the burial. And because of the restrictions on people, of course, only a set number of people are allowed to be there. So let us take this opportunity now to ask Allah Ta'ala for forgiveness for Brother Sayyid Tufail Ahmed and all of the community members that we have lost recently. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to have mercy on their souls. We ask Allah Ta'ala for those that have died because of COVID-19 to give them the death of the shaheed, of the martyr, and may they be resurrected with the shuhada in the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to protect us, to protect our parents, and to bless and protect our children. We ask Allah ta'ala to protect our economy and our businesses, our centers, our teachers and our students. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give wisdom to those who are in positions of authority over us. May Allah ta'ala give them the wisdom to make the right decision, to make and enact the right protocols. We ask Allah ta'ala for the strength to persevere through this difficulty. We ask Allah ta'ala for the strength to abide by these laws. We ask Allah ta'ala ultimately to bless us in these final days of Sha'ban, to bless us with the month of Ramadan. May this be a month of great spiritual openings, of gratitude, of thankfulness, of thanksgiving, of forgiveness. May we recommit ourselves. May we really take this as an opportunity to commit ourselves to a better way of life, to a life that is guided by the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah Ta'ala all of this with all of His beautiful names. We know that He is able over all things. I hope to see everyone soon. Please stay safe. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.